1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Jeremy, you there?
I do not see Jeremy in the list yet.
Okay. We'll give them half a minute to catch up. Okay, Jeremy will catch up. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'd like to ask Patrick Bennett, our student trustee, one of our student trustees, to read the land acknowledgement, please. Patrick?
As the land sleeps silently in winter, the Ottawa Catholic School Board respectfully acknowledges that we are located on traditional Algonquin territory. We acknowledge the Algonquin people's long-standing relationship with this land, which remains unceded. We also pay respect to all Indigenous people from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home.
Thank you. Father Saunders, can you read us some prayer and then read the festival days, please?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. God our Father, we come together in your presence as people with a shared responsibility for Catholic education. We ask you to guide us so we may guide our students and children. We ask you to be present with us as you are present with them. We ask you to be a light to our searching and theirs. And we ask these things in the name of Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
And we pray for our staff and students, extended family members, especially those who have lost their lives due to COVID-19. And we recommend to your prayers the following persons who have passed away: Elizabeth Valiquette, retired teacher and technology integrator; Anne-Marie Bainbridge, mother of Kathleen Bainbridge, teacher at St. Elizabeth School; Jane Hesselink, mother in Daniel School; and Elaine Leslie, retired longtime teacher at St. Mark's High School. Eternal rest grant unto them, O Lord, and let perpetual light shine upon them. May they rest in peace. Amen.
Amen.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And as is our practice now, today we will be dealing with St. Bridget's School and St. Bridget. The school has the same name as the parish church at the time. And Lower Town was inhabited by French Canadians, and they built the cathedral, while the Irish, who also lived in Lower Town, built St. Bridget's Church, the patroness of Ireland. The old school is now occupied by the Shepherds of Good Hope, and was actually the beginning of the ministry of the Shepherds of Good Hope. The life of St. Bridget is fairly unknown and is filled with many legends and myths. What we do know is that St. Bridget was born in 400 years ago, more, whose name was Broca, a Christian who was baptized by St. Patrick, and her father was Dapte, a chieftain. Broca was a slave, so St. Bridget was born in slavery. What is remarkable is that from a young age, St. Bridget gave away food and necessities to the people in need. Eventually, her father grew tired of her charitable nature and wanted to sell her to the King of Leinster, who had pity on her and set her free. Her father then arranged for her to marry a bard. She did want to marry in Kiln and one for men, as well as a school for metalwork and illumination. There is evidence that St. Bridget was a good friend of St. Patrick and that they shared the care for the needy. St. Bridget died of natural causes on the 1st of February in 525. Her feast day is on that day. She is actually also the only saint in that we have a school named after for the month of February. So we start the month off well.
Thank you, Father. Your picture's frozen right now, so I don't know if you're finished. I think we'll proceed with O Canada. All rise, please.
Oh, Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Car ton bras s'est porté l'épée, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants exploits. God keep our land glorious and free. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Oh, Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you, Father. Just as a sideline, my mother's name is Bridget and my father's name is Patrick. So your story was very personal as well. And my mom's birthday is February 1st. So we have no student departmental profile, no delegations, no public sessions. Can I have approval of the agenda, please?
Mr. Chair, I have an item.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like for item L4 to have a recorded vote.
L4. Okay.
Recorded vote. Thank you.
Any other additions, deletions? Can I have a mover, please? As amended, Trustee Coburn, seconded by Trustee Whittet. That the agenda of the regular board meeting as amended of January 26, 2021 be approved. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. No declarations of interest. Confirmations of minutes of the regular board meeting of January 12th, 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee McEwen and Trustee Warren. That the minutes of the regular board meeting of January 12th, 2021 be adopted as presented. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There's no unfinished business from previous meetings. There's no trustee motions. Item K, presentation and consideration of committee reports. Memo from the Director of Education, re student trustees, mid-year report to the board. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's certainly been nothing normal about this particular school year. And for our two student trustees, they've had to quickly learn how to lead in a virtual environment. So I'm pleased to share with you today their presentation that they will take you through to look at how they've been doing as student trustees, largely in a virtual environment, but certainly they will share some of their experiences to date in the first half of the school year.
Thank you. Go ahead, Patrick and Namir.
Would you like us to share the presentation, or should?
Yes, if you have it, Patrick, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Is that all shared with you? Can you see it right now? All right, thank you. So as Mr. D'Amico said, this year has been quite different from what we were originally expecting as student trustees and garnering this position. But this is what Amir and I have been up to so far, I guess. So first we'll start off with our Senate meetings. We've had 2 Senate meetings so far. The first one we had in October, I think October 21st, and the second one was December 15th. And so on the first meeting, we focused on introducing the group to each other and allowing them to meet for a first time. We tried to make it as engaging as possible. And in a virtual environment, it's of course quite different than a regular environment. Usually you'd have icebreakers, people going into different groups and talking with each other. But this time it was a little different, but we tried to incorporate different games, some breakout activities. We also were honored to have 2 school resource officers able to give a presentation on what it's like for them in their role and how they, what their job is basically in the school board, which I thought was very interesting. We also were thankful that Mr. D'Amico could come on and answer some questions for the different co-presidents who were quite interested on what the school year was going to look like. So that was exciting. In the second meeting, which was in December, we focused more on discussion since the students kind of knew each other more. We focused on the collaborative activities, and we highlighted the main topic of social media was one of our big ideas, but we'll talk more about that in the continuing slides. So those were kind of just a quick recap of our first 2 meetings. I'll change and then Namir can explain the next slide.
I'll quickly piggyback off of what Patrick said. I got a lot of feedback from the co-presidents after both of our student Senate meetings, and they truly appreciated Mr. D'Amico's presence at our meetings. They thought that Mr. D'Amico was someone they couldn't directly talk to, but they truly appreciated that he volunteered his time to be present and answer all the questions they had. But about the use of social media. So the use of social media was a very important topic of discussion that we focused on in our second meeting. In groups of 2, Patrick and I used the brainstorming tool called Miro Brainstorming, which you can see on the bottom left, to create some dialogue amongst the co-presidents. at first it was kind of a little bit awkward because we don't really know each other. There's 30 kids in a Google Meet. You only use Google Meet to be in your classes, right? So it was kind of awkward at first, but Patrick did a great job making everyone comfortable in the Google Meets. So yes, we used the application Miro brainstorming to create dialogue on how social media has aided student bodies in reaching out to using social media aided student bodies and outreach campaigns, especially during the pandemic, and amongst the various student councils in our board. And we also developed a plan as a collective that co-presidents can use when speaking to their administrations about allowing the use of social media for their student councils. So this plan included the benefits of social media to better school spirit and spread mental health support for all students during the online schooling during COVID. Oh, next slide, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Amir. So here's our some of the other activities we've been involved in. As you guys know, we've been attending these board meetings, which are bi-monthly, which have been quite interesting and insightful for us to watch and get to participate in and give our opinion, which I appreciate. We also set up Remind for the Student Senate to participate in. We're hoping to get more involved in that. It's been difficult this year because everyone has a lot going on, and there's a lot of like you don't really know how people are doing in their different school environments, what classes they have, what, like if they're working, if they have jobs. But we're going to try and make the Senate a lot more involved. One of the main things we both wanted to focus on was that in the past, at like the beginning of the year, we found that the Senate was more of just like 2 meetings or like, I guess 4 meetings all year round. And we wanted to make it more like a club and like a collaborative effort from everyone. And they could like communicate often and participate in different activities year long, other than just the specific days we had Senate meetings. So one of the activities I came up with, or the both of us, was that we wanted to use we used like a puzzle or like a kind of like a word problem activity, and we'd release like a puzzle every week, and then we based off how fast people could answer it, they scored points, and at the end I'll give a prize to the winner. And that way we let the Senate kind of have something to do with each other. Naimir has some great ideas coming up, and future ideas we're going to try and do to try and make the Senate as involved as possible with each other, not just 1 or 2 off meetings. So we want to make it more of like a family feel, basically. Here's the next slide.
Yeah, so Patrick and I really wanted to make the Student Senate instead of like an obligation, but something that they enjoy, and to create friendships that will last past our positions in the board in our schools. And Patrick and I, we developed amazing relationships, like one-on-one with a lot of the co-presidents. We put money together to send out Uber Eats if ever they won like a little competition or like a quizzes or a Kahoot. So for future plans, we plan to create a segment called Humans of OCSB, where we highlight excellence within our 15 high schools on our OCSB students account. So if you see on the bottom left and right, there's examples from St. Pius and from St. Paul's. And each week, one pair of co-presidents will nominate a student to be featured on our page for their hard work within their school communities. So starting the new quadmester, February, we'll be posting every week alphabetically. So starting with All Saints, a student that's exhibited Catholic graduate expectations and who've shown amazing excellence in leadership, especially during COVID. And that plays into our goal that we created like a family amongst the co-presidents and the Student Senate.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great idea that Naimir came up with. I can't really take credit for it, as all her, but I'm super excited to see how it goes. These are just some things I've learned so far. So going into as student trustee, I've learned a lot about the importance of organization. especially like organizing meetings, how much work actually goes into it. And I had never like written out of an agenda before. I was more of just like a kind of like, I just go in there like freestyle it type of thing. But it really helps, and it's taught me a lot about being organized and ready to present. Also, planning out a schedule. It's busy. I mean, also with this online time, you have to plan out when meetings are coming up, to leave time for it, to make sure you're managing school, like balancing occupations, like I wrote there. So that's the main importance of organization. The other thing is communication. A lot of the trustee role, and I'm sure all other trustees, a lot of communicating. Like I didn't expect it to be like, you always have to be checking your emails. Like I had a really bad habit before I went to this role of not checking my emails that much. But now that I've got the position, I'm always trying to be on top of it, communicating with Naimir and making sure we're ready for the meetings in the Senate, and make sure the Senate's all okay. And then thirdly, and finally, I've learned the importance of collaboration, like how a group can work together and really get a lot done. So that's been interesting.
I didn't add in my slide communication, but I feel like I should have. Patrick is definitely far better than I am when it comes to communication. Because a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I would not check my phone. I wouldn't answer messages. I wouldn't answer emails. Coming into this position, I learned very quickly that you can't not answer messages. So Patrick helps me stay on top of that. So we remind him about commitments that we have. But so I've learned the importance of democracy. The December elections proved that democratic processes at the local level that have an effect on my life and my schooling are very, very, very important. I didn't really start, like Patrick and I talked a little bit after that one meeting, how interesting it was from like start to finish, and how we didn't really know that was a process before, but it was, I would say it was very cool learning about that. And I learned the importance of time management. I was a procrastinator. I was one of those students that if I had something to be done, I would do it early. I would do some here and there, but then I would do it mainly last minute. But this position, I don't really have time for that now. I work, I go to school, and there's this position. So I've learned how to manage my time, do things early when they can be done, set aside time for, especially now with the pandemic, my mental health. So I've definitely grown into a new person during these 6 months in this position.
So some of our final thoughts. The position has been super interesting, and it's definitely taught me a lot about who I am and like what I want to do when I'm older. The pandemic definitely forced us to evolve. It is not what we expected, but I still think it's been a great experience, and it's taught me so much about different programs and systems that can be used to make meetings and discussions as engaging as possible. I've learned a lot about the OCSB community, and like I've had great support from everyone, like all the superintendents, Miss Donahue, Mr. D'Amico. It's been great support from everyone, which I'm very thankful for. And the board meetings have been very interesting to take part of. Of course, I would have loved to do them in person and get to know all you guys better and like shake your hands and get to meet you. But virtually is still being very cool.
Yes, and for me too, I echo everything that Patrick said. And I appreciate everyone in these board meetings, because you taught me the importance of professionalism. You all are very, very, very professional. And at first it was very intimidating because, again, like the other co-presidents at first, I thought that speaking to people in your positions was unobtainable, and I would maybe never come across the people that run our board. But I appreciate you for being so welcoming to Patrick and I. Virtual is very, very difficult, but you've all been very welcoming, so I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. You're right. Virtual is very difficult, and was only on Thursday when we were doing agenda planning that we were talking about you've never been to a board meeting. You've never sat at the end of the table.
No, it's sad.
Hopefully we can do it by the end of June.
Mm-hmm.
Is there
Thank you,
any,
Mr.
is there any great job and great presentation? Is there any questions or comments from the trustees? Trustee Moore.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for the nice comments, Namir and Patrick. Just wait till budget, though. We won't mind if we just see your little camera go shut for a little bit. Because we'll be wishing we were you. Because spreadsheets are not my friend. I had a question. I think, Namir, you did a lot of the future events sort of thoughts. And you used the wording humans at OCSB. Is there a story behind why you picked humans? That's an interesting word choice. That's
through you, Mr. Chair. The original Humans of like whatever account was originally in New York. So it was Humans of New York. And they would stop people on the street and parks and subways and ask them about their life stories. And that page, that I would spend hours just scrolling through that page, learning about like the heartbreaks and the hardships of people. And St. Paul started up an account a while back, and then my school started up an account. And it was raw dialogue. I never knew about these students, never seen them. And it was so interesting to learn that one was training for the Olympics and, got into the Olympics. And then the other one, like a math whiz. Like these were students that I never knew before. But I could spend hours just learning about their stories, and there was no other medium of learning about their stories. So I thought that maybe this could be a board-wide thing, where you learn about a student in Orleans learns about a student in Manotick. Like that would be, I thought that'd be very, very cool. So Patrick was on board as soon as I told him, so I appreciate him for that. And I can't wait to get that started in February.
and now I can't wait to sign up and read it. So thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. For either a student trustee, it's kind of a two-part question in the one question. How has your role evolved during the pandemic? And can you advise us as on your choice to use Instagram for social media?
I can answer that if you want. So through you, Mr. Chair. I think before, from kind of mirroring or shadowing, I think is the term, Segni and Carlos, prior to like the shutdown, they were a lot more involved going to different meetings and like initiatives of the board and being more involved on the ground, shall I say. And now that with like the COVID-19 pandemic, it's been a lot more virtually interacting with students. And I think the social media kind of leads into that. But the social media is a great way of getting the voice of the students out there and telling like the students that like we're with you, we're behind you, and also a way of like updating them with what's going on, because you can't like go and tell them if it's in a pandemic and everyone's online like it is right now. But with social media, it's easy to update. Almost everyone uses it, and you can spread a lot of like positivity with it.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Just the Instagram, just a little more about that because I've never used it.
Sure. So our Segni and Carlos, they set up a student trustee Instagram. It's called OCSB Students, and what we basically do, we have a couple posts so far, but what we plan on doing, like Naimir said, was we'll post photos of like different students around the board and kind of showcase what makes our board so great. And besides that, we'll also give updates similarly to what the actual OCSB account does. We'll encourage like different events going on. But mainly focused, our specific social media will be more focused on like the students and how they're doing, and initiatives that they're running.
If I could,
Thanks to, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick and I had a very long discussion about how the Instagram is more targeted towards students, and then Twitter is more targeted towards parents.
Oh,
A lot of students my age and younger do not know how Twitter works. They just kind of use it for like news, if ever. But Instagram was very easy to use since and every student is on it. And I remember speaking to Natalie Rodriguez and OCSB Communications, and she had a very, 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 very smart point about how students no longer want to go through links to learn about things. They would rather just quickly scroll, be able to read about what's going on, especially with going back to school. Nobody really knew what was going on, but Mr. D'Amico did a great job with his coming back to school video. Students just scrolled, watched a video, and then scrolled back.
Did you
out.
like his dog? Did you like his dog?
Yes, I like this dog. But students, it was easier for students to get information when it was at the tip of their finger.
Thanks to both of you. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Trustee Niamir, and it's regarding the Humans of OCSB. I think it's a great idea. I was just wondering if you circulated or if there are criteria, and I'm thinking of, you mentioned about the Catholic graduate expectations and leadership as being two sort of criteria, but have you talked about the criteria being more inclusive? So it might involve, say, special needs students who are exceptional or anything, or just what are the criteria that you've talked about or circulated, if there are some? Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick and I and the other co-presidents, it was kind of like I feel like it's an unspoken rule that it can be any student that you feel is just exceptional. And especially my age group, they are very, very inclusive and I haven't, witnessed any bullying in 6 years since elementary school. So I feel like I gave a lot of leeway to the co-presidents when it comes to nominating somebody. They're exceptional with their leadership. So I gave them a lot of leeway in choosing who they feel is. But that's a great point, Trustee Curry. I think Patrick and I will take that, bring it back to the co-presidents.
Yeah, basically, probably when we set it up, we'll send out different criteria for the co-presidents to look for when they send forth like a nomination for who they want posted on the page.
Okay, is there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much, both of you, for your presentation. Very good to get updated. And as I said, we do miss you not being in the boardroom. So we're hopeful that by the end of June, fingers crossed, 5 months away, that we can be back in the boardroom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So can I have a mover, please, to accept the report? Trustee Coburn and Trustee Lawrence. That the memorandum from the Director of Education dated January 21st, 2021, entitled Student Trustees Mid-Year Report to the Board be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item L1, presentation and consideration of staff for trustee reports. Memo from the Superintendent of Student Success Intermediate Secondary. Reading intervention models of support in a pandemic. Superintendent Friendo, welcome.
Thank you. And we'll just wait for our slides to come up. But while they're coming up, it's such a pleasure to have the opportunity to bring an update to the board about our reading intervention programs. 3 years ago, we began to support students with their reading through both Empower and leveled literacy intervention. Currently, Every one of our elementary schools and most of our intermediate secondary schools have at least one program in place. As you can imagine, the pandemic has resulted in a number of challenges to educators trying to implement these programs both in our in-person and virtual schools. It's my pleasure to introduce Christina Colasante, our elementary literacy consultant, and Erin Doak, our literacy consultant for intermediate secondary, to tell you about how they have creatively met these challenges. Erin and Christina have dedicated an incredible amount of time and effort this year to ensure that our students are still able to access the reading intervention programs that they need to be successful in school and in life. Next slide, please. So you can see from this tiered support model that the vast majority of students can learn to read and write with strong, differentiated classroom instruction. Between 10 and 15% of students require a short-term Tier 2 intervention to help them meet success in reading. Our board is currently using primarily level literacy intervention, or LLI, to provide this. We can also expect that between 1 and 5% of students will require a longer-term Tier 3 intervention to support their reading. Our board is using Empower to meet this need. Erin and Christina will now tell you about the challenges and solutions to providing reading interventions during a pandemic. Next slide, please.
Thank you. This year in face-to-face elementary schools, we have a total of 52 elementary schools delivering Empower. And 23 of these schools are new to Empower this year. As Superintendent Frendo mentioned, the Empower program is an intense program that consists of 110 lessons. Thus, last year's schools are still working on completing the program that they started last year. For the students who didn't finish due to the school closure last year. In a regular school year, these students would be grouped from different classes together in one group to receive the Empower program. However, due to the necessary COVID health measures and cohorting, many schools have had to offer 2 to 3 cohorts in order to accommodate different, deliver 2 to 3 sessions of Empower in order to accommodate the cohorts. This requires a significant amount of teamwork and flexibility on behalf of the entire school in order to accommodate the Empower schedules. The teachers have been remarkable in adapting and teaching these reading programs with masks and visors. As well, we have 64 elementary schools currently offering the LLI Leveled Literacy Intervention Program. 5 of them are new this year, and they have also had to work within the COVID health measures and cohorts. And presently, these schools are working on delivering these programs remotely. Next slide, please. So in the elementary virtual program, we currently have one group of 6 students receiving the Empower program beginning this week. We will also have 2 groups of students in the virtual program who were part of Empower last year, but due to the school closure weren't able to finish the program. So they will now be completing that program online. These students are going to be taught by an online teacher who has been assigned specifically to teach Empower in the virtual program. As well, we have 81 groups of students receiving the Leveled Literacy Intervention Program, which accommodates approximately 220 students. This is being offered through the virtual teachers during their remedial time 2 to 3 times a week. And additionally, we have the Flyleaf reading program that we're currently using with our emergent readers. We have 38 students in this program right now. And this program is being used for students who are still at the very beginning stages of reading because it focuses more extensively on foundational reading skills. Next slide, please.
At the intermediate and secondary level, we have 5 schools actively implementing the Empower program face-to-face. All have taken the program online since the school closures. And so in total, we have 29 intermediate students taking the Empower program. In terms of the face-to-face LLI programming, we have 9 schools currently running during the pandemic, 1 in high school and 8 in intermediate. Approximately 50 students are currently enrolled. These programs have been challenging to run and schedule at times because of students in isolation and COVID restrictions. We don't have the regular attendance that we would in a normal school year, but the teachers are running these programs as regularly as possible under the circumstances, and the feedback has been very positive so far. Next slide, please. We also now have one teacher assigned to the LLI virtual programming for intermediate. There are currently 37 students enrolled in the online programming in 8 different groups. The students meet 2 to 3 times a week for about 45 minutes, and the programming started this month and runs until June 2021. Next slide, please.
So we also had to modify how we delivered professional development this year. All teachers received professional development virtually from their home school. Empower provided training virtually by a certified Empower trainer, and LLI face-to-face teachers were trained virtually by a certified LLI consultant. The professional development session for LLI was then recorded and used for subsequent professional development sessions, as we offered several training dates to meet the needs of lots of new teachers that were starting LLI this year. We also provided LLI and Flyleaf professional development sessions for teachers in the virtual program. We had to modify the program for virtual environment, and we created model videos using Jamboard, Google Slides, and Google Meets, and demonstrating how these programs could be delivered online. A video link is provided should you wish to view a sample at a later time. Next slide, please. So although schools and teachers have had to adapt to cohorting, health measures, and the virtual environment, which has not been easy, we continue to receive positive feedback from the schools on these programs. We thought we'd share a few success stories with you. The first one was an email that we received from an elementary virtual LLI teacher who stated how engaged her LLI students were and how the lessons from the program were also helping to inform her reading instruction with her own students in her virtual classroom. As well, we had an Empower teacher who shared how one of her grade 3 students who started the program not being able to spell his own name or identify any letters and sounds was now, for the first time in his life, able to read short stories, thanks to some extra support and the Empower program, which is truly amazing and life-changing. Next slide, please.
All of the feedback we are receiving from teachers is extremely positive. You can see here that Luke, an intermediate LLI teacher, says, "I've been running the program with our grade 7 group. This group, I was able to schedule sessions 3 times a week. We began in the final week of September and ran until the last week before Christmas. All had shown tremendous improvement in reading fluency and comprehension. Not only that, but the students enjoyed reading. They were excited for the opportunities to read aloud and share their understanding by responding to questions in group discussions. It was amazing to witness their progress and see the increased confidence they had in themselves and their abilities." So this success story really encompasses all of the common threads we are hearing from teachers, in that all students are showing improvements in both reading levels, confidence, and general attitudes towards literacy. And that teachers are also proud to witness their students growing in these important areas of their academic and personal lives. Next slide, please. When teachers transitioned to the remote teaching due to the school closures, we received positive feedback on the continued delivery of the program. One administrator stated, "We have continued with the LLI program during remote learning. The teacher delivered the resources to her students, and she has been able to teach the lessons through Google Meet. She did not feel that the change in modality had a significant impact on the delivery of the program and has been impressed with student engagement." So this is encouraging feedback to hear as we continue to navigate the transitions in and out of schools due to COVID. Though these programs have not been without their challenges, the delivery of both Empower and LLI programs have been very successful. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for providing us with the time to share and present this information.
I think you can all see that Erin and Christina are extremely passionate about what they're doing, and their passion and their problem-solving abilities have really helped us to ensure that students continue to learn to read. And as they both mentioned, we're now in remote learning, which has just created another bunch of new challenges, and they keep meeting those head on as well. and we'd be very happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, ladies, for your presentation. Trustee Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, well, to either of the presenters, it would be fine. I was just wondering, it was in your slides a bit there about the how the approach in the virtual academies a little different. I think you mentioned something like showing making videos or having videos as part of it. But then you had that testimonial from, I believe it was Cleo, who used Empower. And it was very remarkable what she did. But I was just wondering if how a student in a virtual situation who doesn't have the attention span, and perhaps the teacher is not able to give the extra attention that Cleo gave to the student she was talking about, how does that impact the delivery of the program? I mean, are we relying on teachers going above and beyond to deliver it, or can we deliver it in a virtual environment effectively the same as we do in the in-person environment? Thanks.
I can respond to that if you want. Through you, Mr. Chair, I can respond to Trustee Curry's. I can try to respond to Trustee Curry's question. So you're right, the virtual environment has brought a number of challenges, and Chloe, who you spoke to, she did offer some one-on-one support, as she mentioned, which would be much more challenging in the online environment. However, I have to say, with the new breakout feature in Google Meets, now teachers can put students in their own room. So if a teacher did need to work a little extra with a student or do something extra, they could put them in a separate room and provide some extra support. It's not the same thing, obviously, as being in a classroom and saying, hey, can you stay back a little bit longer or what have you. However, there is flexibility in asynchronous time with teachers, and they have time where they can pick certain kids that they want to work extra time with. And usually those students that they're working with are the students who need more support to get up to grade level. So I'm not sure if that effectively answers it, or if Erin has anything else she wants to add.
Yes, for you, Mr. Chair, also the sizes of these groups are very small, so the students are able to get the one-on-one that they need. And so far, the feedback has been very positive that they are getting the feedback, or they are getting the one-on-one that's required for this program.
Thank you.
Trustee Simpson.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure who can answer this question. First of all, I'm extremely impressed. I saw leveled reading in action when I was visiting a school, when we could visit schools, and Empower, and I'm very, very excited at the prospect of getting students who are struggling with reading up to grade level. My question is, are we collecting any data with regards to how many PM benchmarks are gained by certain students at certain grades, and is the Empower as effective as leveled reading? It's always impressive when you can collect this kind of data to show how successful these programs are. So are we?
Yeah, yes, through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer the trustee's question. Trustee Simpson's question, sorry. We are collecting data. This year is a little bit different. But in the past, over the past 3 years, we have collected data, and our data has shown that on average, students in the LLI program increase about 7 PM levels, and in Empower, 8 PM levels, which is fantastic, as I know you're a former educator, so you understand that is quite significant. And last year, although we had a school closure, our research officer, Dr. Figueredo, was able to note that students were on track. We had gained about 4 PM levels on average by mid-year, which shows that we were heading in the right direction. This year, normally it's this time of the year when we're getting that midline data, and with the school closure, it's a little bit challenging to be requesting that from teachers right now in schools. So some of them have already inputted the data, and from a quick glance, I've seen increases of like 12 PM levels for some students. So it is quite remarkable, and the program really depends on the student. So it depends on the needs of the student, because they teach similar skills, but the intensity and the explicitness definitely differs, and it depends on the needs of the students how well that program is going to be, which is why we want to have options for students. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. 2 questions, if that's okay. Was there adequate time in the school day for PD to assist teachers in the transition to online learning?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Trustee Armstrong, I'm assuming that you mean PD for these particular reading intervention programs?
Yes.
Okay, so there was PD provided, and yes, it was provided out of the during the regular school day. Empower is 2 full days of training. We really could not do that before and after school. It's 2 intense days of training, so we did have the permission to go ahead and provide that training during the school day. The LLI training isn't as intensive, but again, it was done with every teacher that was new to LLI this year during the school day.
Through you, Mr. Chair, my second question. How do we ensure consistency of PD for online learning across the board?
With the Empower training, through you, Mr. Chair, for the Empower training, it's the training is absolutely consistent because we have an Empower trainer from Empower, and she is the only person that trains our teachers. And so whether they got the training last year or they're getting the training this year, they are all getting very consistent training. And with the LLI, we do have an LLI trainer as well. And our LLI trainer has done some of the training synchronously with our teachers. And when that wasn't possible, she provided, we recorded her sessions, and we used those recorded sessions with the teachers who weren't able to attend the synchronous sessions. So it is very consistent.
Thank you.
Trustee Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So first of all, thank you for the presentation. It was excellent. It's an excellent initiative, and it's nice to know that it's being supported by professionals like yourselves. My question is a little bit outside the classroom. As somebody who learned to read, not just in the classroom, but with the help of a patient grandmother, have you received any feedback from parents? I know we've seen some feedbacks from teachers and that. What has the feedback from parents been as we are in a pandemic? And I know parents are challenged with a lot of different priorities. What sort of feedback have you received from them?
I can answer that. Through you, Mr. Chair, in moving this virtually online, I had the opportunity to reach out to parents, and many of them thanked me for calling, said that they knew that their son or daughter had been struggling, but had no idea what to do. So they're extremely grateful, and we work with the families. Our LLI teacher is working with the families, and they're very, very happy to have these programs provided to them.
Great, thank you.
Is there any other questions or comments? Trustee Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one short little one that arose from the presentation. And for either Christina or Aaron, probably Aaron, because she's secondary. I think the slide said there was 39 students, high school students taking LLI or Empower, one or the other. But I was wondering, how did these students get to high school with such a low reading skill? Are we talking? Are they all new Canadians that might be in that situation, or have you any thoughts about how they ended up in high school without basic reading?
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair, these names have come to us at the 7 and 8 level through resource teachers and other teachers. I know that there have been several types of interventions provided at the elementary level, but up until 3 years ago, we weren't able to provide these opportunities to students. So now it is a priority to continue to identify which students in our schools are in need of this and to ensure that no student graduates without the ability to read and write.
Okay, thank you.
And just to follow up, we started in elementary. We soon realized we had to move to intermediate secondary. And as we continue in the elementary with Empower and LLI and some other programs that we're looking at now too, the big hope is that by the time we get to grade 7, we will not need these programs any longer.
Trustee Lawrence, was that a half? Put your hand up.
Yeah.
Have to take yourself off mute first.
Good. Yeah, that was sort of a hand up. Trustee Simpson asked my question, but I do have a comment for anyone. I'm just amazed at just in 3 years how far this program has gone. I remember putting it in the Glebe report, and someone got in touch with me from Toronto who was interested in this. So first of all, congratulations. It's wonderful. Secondly, my guess is after this pandemic, you're going to be quite busy. You know, with all, because just the whole thing online, it's not a miracle worker. So I'm glad this is going as well as it is. Glad that there's been the 3 years of experience and the you know, the great feedback and the numbers and Cindy's question, and good luck. I think it's wonderful. So thank you. Of course, a good herring cover there, eh, Erin? I had to throw that in, dear. Erin grew up in the cove next to me, Nova Scotia, so I'll behave now. Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And she's over that, is she?
As we're being recorded,
Yes, this is public meeting, Mr. Colburn.
it's great that two Maritimers can even converse virtually. They will always find a way, and there's nothing wrong with that. Ladies, great job, great presentation. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I have a mover, please, to accept the report? Trustee Lawrence and Trustee Simpson. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Student Success Intermediate Secondary dated January 19, 2021, entitled Reading Intervention Models of Support in a Pandemic be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 6, memo from the Superintendent of Planning Facilities, re St. James School and St. Anne School attendance boundary revision consultation document. Welcome, Superintendent Vella and Mr. Baxter.
Thank you, and good evening, Mr. Chair and trustees. On behalf of the Planning and Facilities Department, we have Ian Baxter, Manager of Planning and Construction, presenting the plan to finalize the review of the attendance boundaries to St. James and St. Anne schools. So Ian will start the presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Valla, and good evening, everyone. Through you, Mr. Chair, trustees have in front of them a memo and consultation document for a proposed revision to the attendance boundaries of St. James and St. Anne schools. We are seeking approval this evening to proceed with the consultation process and for the use of the attached document to inform parents and families and receive public input. Some background regarding the proposed boundary revision. In order to help reduce overcrowding pressures at St. Anne's School, in 2017, an option area was introduced by the board, which provided families residing in that portion of its boundary with the ability to choose to attend St. James School instead. The option area was formed with input from the Ottawa Student Transportation Authority and is located within the St. James grade 1 to 6 walk zone. Although a shift in choice was relatively slow in the first few years of the option, for the past 2 years, the uptake has increased. And for this year, JK enrollment is divided almost equally between the two schools. In 2019, the board's capital plan was approved. Included in the plan as a short-term capital priority was the construction of a 6th classroom addition to St. James, and with it, a redirection of the option area to St. James only. In July 2020, we received capital funding approval from the ministry to build the addition onto St. James. Construction is anticipated to begin on site during the summer of 2021, with the addition completed and ready for students in September 2022. We are now working toward completing the second part of the approved project, revising the attendance boundaries of both St. James and St. Anne to redirect option area students to St. James only. Both St. James and St. Anne schools are located within the Bridlewood neighborhood on Stonehaven Drive, approximately 2 kilometers from each other. St. Anne has an enrollment of 708 students in a building with a capacity of 504 pupils, a utilization rate of 140%, and 10 portable classrooms on site. St. James is a smaller school building with a capacity of 363 pupil places, an enrollment of 372 students, and no portables. Ministry funding for the addition to St. James was provided in order to help alleviate the accommodation pressures at St. Anne, and also to better balance enrollment between the two schools in the longer term. The proposed boundary revision will accomplish both of these things. Completing the addition and associated renovations to St. James will increase its pupil capacity to 504, the same school capacity as St. Anne. Redirecting all option area students to St. James is projected to increase its enrollment to 475 students for September 2022, a utilization rate of 94%. Enrollment at St. Anne would be reduced to 534 students, a utilization rate of 106%. 5 years on, under the proposed revision, both schools are projected to have enrollments in the mid-400s and utilization rates in the low 90% range. From a longer-term planning perspective, we anticipate that the addition and the associated boundary revision will result in stability for students and families in the Bridlewood area, and that no further elementary accommodation changes will be needed. We are recommending that a consultation process with these two school communities take place over the next 4 months in order to receive input regarding the proposed revision. In recognition of the COVID-19 pandemic, our standard process will be modified slightly to ensure that we are respecting Ottawa public health rules around face-to-face gatherings. A public meeting at a school located within the community will not be able to take place. Instead, staff will work with both schools regarding how best to conduct that part of the process virtually, likely a virtual public meeting in the latter part of March or the early part of April. All other aspects of our typical consultation process would be followed. Formal notice of the process to the school communities involved, St. James and St. Anne, provision of the consultation document to schools for distribution to parents and families, and the creation of a dedicated web page on the board's website containing relevant information and avenues for input. Wider public notice of the consultation process would be distributed via regular board social media channels, and residents living adjacent to the school would be informed of the future construction on site. A recommendation report regarding the boundary revision and including a summary of public input received during the consultation process is scheduled to be brought to the board for approval in May 2021, this May. Implementation of approved changes to boundaries would be for the following September 2022. It should be noted that this proposed boundary change is not new. As mentioned earlier, it was included within the board's 2019 capital plan. And in addition, planning and facility staff have met previously with parent councils of both schools to discuss its potential impact. If there are questions from trustees regarding the report, staff are here tonight to answer them.
Okay. Trustee Moore.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair. Oh, Mr. Baxter didn't say it, but in those 2 kilometers, there's 4 elementary schools on Bridlewood, and it's the main road in and out of the subdivision. So my first phone calls have been when I was elected were with the city councilor because of the parking up at St. Anne's. And it was so bad they actually managed to get banned from some of the side streets. It's change is always difficult, especially in Canada. I don't like change, but this is going to be so needed. It's going to be so nice to have a more of a balance to the schools. So thank you very much. And my real question, I guess, Mr. Baxter, maybe you can help with this, is that I've been watching a bit of the agriculture and planning department planning committees at the city level today and yesterday, and they're big on putting land into the urban boundary that's adjacent to already urban areas, such as Hope Side Road. But that wasn't explicitly mentioned. Is Hope Side Road up for being put into the urban area and developed in a more sooner than planned?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the area I think that you're referring to is south of Hope Side Road within the St. Anne attendance area. And that area is prime agricultural land and is part of what, as part of the new official plan, the city of Ottawa is sort of terming the gold belt. And there was a council, there's been a previous council motion that was passed that protects that land from development. So the answer is no, that would not be included within.
It's just been crazy out that area with buildings, so it'd be nice for the parents to know it's not going to just balloon again up to 700. So thank you very much.
Trustee Armstrong.
Through you, Mr. Chair. There has been low participation in years past at these meetings. Is there anything we can do to boost participation in the virtual consultation meetings and presentation?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm not sure of participation levels in the past with similar processes at the board. To some degree, participation really at times really reflects the issues that are involved. And obviously, when more difficult issues are being discussed, the participation rate tends to increase. One possibility in terms of one possibility would be to post a presentation. I think what had worked virtually at a coterminous board, I think during the spring, during the lockdown, was to have a PowerPoint presentation with an audio overlay. In other words, a virtual public meeting that was available to parents at any time, not at any one particular moment. A public meeting takes place on this date at this time. It would be available throughout that consultation process. So that would be one, and I believe the uptake did increase significantly in terms of the input that was received. So that would be one possibility.
Sounds like a good idea, Ian. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Trustee Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Baxter. I was wondering, could you share with us how has the feedback been from the parent councils? Was there any outstanding issue that arose in these preliminary discussions with the parent councils?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not so far, not to date in terms of the process to date.
And maybe through you, Mr. Chair, just to add to that, Trustee Moore was involved with the walking tour through those communities about 2 years ago. So maybe since we weren't there, maybe she might have a comment or two to make, but I believe those issues were brought forward, right?
Yeah, I spoke with both parent councils. One of the major ones was because each school has a childcare. Parents were worried that if they lived in the center, and principal at the time was very clear, the principals were both very clear about how our policy works with childcare and being able to cross boundary. So that really calmed them down, but that was the major issue, I think, at the time. And everything else was
pretty calm. I see people don't like change, but I think they could see it was going to be beneficial to both sides.
Yeah, and if I may add just one other piece, through you, Mr. Chair, is that as Manager Baxter pointed out, this year's enrollment split about half and half between those two areas for the JK. So it looks like it's being accepted as a redesignated or realigned boundary. So I think it will be received. They've had some time to take that into consideration, and I think it probably will be well received moving forward. I think that they know it's coming.
Is there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can I have a mover, please? Trustee Moore. Seconded by Trustee Simpson. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Planning and Facilities dated January 20th, 2021, entitled St. James School and St. Anne's School Attendance Boundary Revision.
Needs to be read.
Thank you very much. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. Oh.
Thank you.
Item 3, memo from the Superintendent of Leading and Learning, OCSB, Children's Support Schools, Differentiated Support. Superintendent Keeley, welcome.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure this evening to bring you an update about our children's support schools and the differentiated support we have. I would ask that Superintendent Edwards just present the screen and we will start the presentation. Please advance the screen. So we do start, first of all, with the early morning. We have snack and breakfast programs that run in our children's support schools. It's a really important aspect of the day for kids to be well nourished, and we welcome our partnership with ONFI. The school breakfast program does embody all of our strategic commitments. ONFI is one of our community partners. We do want our students to be well by keeping them fed, both in school and students who are virtual. And we are innovative in that we are trying to ensure that with the pandemic, how we can offer the same programming, because there are very specific restrictions regarding processing and handling of food and distribution, etc. So those have been some challenges this year with ONFI and breakfast program. However, we have very dedicated staff at all of our schools who see the value in the program and ensuring that it continues. Costs have gone up through ONFI due to a lot of more prepackaged food being handled for students for snacks. However, they've also been innovative in that they have a breakfast kit program for virtual students that parents can access at different locations. So although they're not in the building, they are still being supported in their wellness. Next slide, please. We are very fortunate that we have so many community partnerships throughout the system with our children's support schools. They do help support through things like clothing, school supplies, technology, as well as financial assistance. In addition to our community partnerships, we have our children's support schools have a sister school from our board and the central departments that also help support in these areas. Next slide, please. And of course, as the months get colder, we are extremely grateful and fortunate to have the support of our community partners to help keep our kids warm through ski jackets, snow pants, as well as hats and mitts, so that our students are warm and that they have appropriate clothing. So again, we'd like to thank here this year the Ottawa Chapter's Knights of Columbus for our Coats for Kids program, as well as we've had many knitting groups in our community that are also areas of support. And CFO has also purchased many snow pants and mitts to help support as well. Next slide, please. In addition, we know that our children's support schools can use a few extra school supplies for the students to be successful. Our Catholic Education Center initiated a school supply drive that was very welcome. We had boxes and boxes of supplies that we could share out to our community support schools. In addition, we had many community partners that also donated financial assistance and gift cards through Staples that the schools were able to use to purchase additional supplies that were needed. We have been able to donate both math kits and a few art kits, thanks to the support of our Elementary Student Success Department and NISA. This year, I believe more than 500 kits were donated to our children's support schools for students both in person and virtual learning. Next slide, please. Of course, with this year having the pandemic and additional COVID-19 responses, we were again very fortunate from some of our community partners. We had 20,000 additional face masks that were donated to support students, which were distributed to the students to bring home for their use and support the health and safety of our families. In addition, individual bottles of hand sanitizers were distributed to the children's support schools, again, to support the health and wellness while in school. Next slide, please. All of our children's support schools have received additional human resources support. Every children's support school received between 1 and 1.5 full-time equivalent additional staff to support their students. And across the system, an additional 10.75 educational assistants were provided. And even some of our children's support schools received an additional half-time 0.50 vice principal allocation. Again, that helps with the overall staffing and programming at those schools. Next slide, please. And of course, I mentioned at one of our previous meetings that we were doing lots of planning for Advent, and that was the same for the children's support schools. Normally, you see the angel tree there. They are linked up with one of their sister schools who helps them with that. Many of them still continued with the support of community partners to have the Baby Jesus lunch. We also, some of the CEC staff organized for a Santa to do a distanced visit for some distribution of presents to some kindergarten students. Many of the principals decided to use some donated funds either through parishes or school council or other funds to have a craft center or so that students could create gifts to bring home to their families at Christmas. So those are just some examples of some of the supports for Advent that have been done, as well as we've had wapoos, Christmas hampers, and other things also donated to support those students and their families. Next slide, please. Additional funding was given to each children's support school for $3,000 for various needs. Again, what they use with those funds is unique to each school, depending on what they would like. Previous years, it included school supplies, busing, field trips. That looks a little different this year, but they are funds that would to increase engagement and experience for kids and student success. In addition, all children's support schools received $1,500 to use at their discretion to enhance the entrance of the school, either inside or out. And the picture there is St. Michael, Ottawa, what they did at their entrance. Lovely. Next slide, please. And finally, of course, the Leading and Learning Department in support with the Equity Advisor did provide cultural resources for the students at children's support schools, in addition to games, books, and manipulatives to support that. And of course, one of the biggest successes of the children's support schools is the networking that the principals do. We hold regular meetings for discussions. They try and find innovative solutions. They check in to see what each other is doing and how they can help solve those problems creatively. So those meetings this year have been virtually as well as through email, but many of the solutions are found with collaboration. And it's another wonderful example of how the Ottawa Catholic School Board and their community partners and staff work together to help support all of our students. And I would be welcome. That's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions at this time.
Thank you very much. Trustee Warren.
Thanks, through you, Mr. Chair. Great presentation. Thanks for sharing that with us. A lot of great things happening. But one of the things that a lot of people are focusing on these days during the pandemic is around the sharing of food or the community of food. So maybe you could touch on the precautions and stuff that are being taken, so many hands aren't touching the food, and how we kind of distribute them out.
Thank you. That's a good question, Trustee Warren. So ONFI is very specific about how the food distribution has to happen. In previous years, we always had volunteers that would go around. That's not happening this year, obviously, with the COVID regulations. So there is usually a designated staff member that would receive the goods and has to again ensure that they're set and that they're not multiple hands touching them. So they do have what's called, many schools have gone to what's called a bin system where the food is pre-packaged as an item and they would take one item. So they're not touching the other items. Whereas before they might have had loose apples or loose fruit, etc. That can't happen. They have a lot more pre-packaged, which unfortunately does increase the cost for the food. However, the network is sourcing out as best as possible and saving money, and they are networking as well with those teachers at every school to see what's working and what's not. I don't know if that helps your question, answers your question.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Great answer.
Questions? Trustee Curry?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Superintendent Keeley. I was just wondering, the children's support schools, you said get from 1 to 1.5 full-time equivalent additional staffing. Does that go just to reduce class sizes, or are there other more innovative ways that that additional staffing is used?
Thank you, Trustee Curry. Through you, Mr. Chair. That additional staffing is up to the discretion of the principal with how it's distributed. Usually it could be to reduce class size. That's one of the primary goals for sure. It could also be to enhance support in resource for some students that may have special needs, etc. Or sometimes it's split between both. So it is at the discretion of the principal based on the most needs for it to have the highest impact for their school.
Thank you.
Trustee Simpson.
This isn't really a question, it's more of a comment that I'm always so proud that our school board truly does show the community with the differentiated support that is given the children's support schools. And in speaking with the principals of these schools, it is so incredibly appreciated that we acknowledge that there are different needs at these schools and that we walk the talk by differentiating staffing. So I just want to compliment everyone on the board for always continuing to make this a priority.
Thank you so much. They do a great job.
I would agree very much with that statement, as my area covers a bunch of schools like that, and the ability to fundraise isn't there as well. So that's a big thing that comes off, that the extras that some school councils just take, that they're going to get $10,000 or $5,000 in fundraising for the year, or these schools, it may be $1,000 where the parents are concentrating on getting food on the table and paying the bills. So it's a very different atmosphere, and I thank you, Superintendent Keeley, for bringing it forward to us.
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you so much for your comments. It's much appreciated.
Can I have a mover, please? Trustee McEwen and Trustee Warren. That the memorandum from the Superintendent of Leading and Learning dated January 20th, 2021, entitled OCSB Children's Support Schools Differentiated Support be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, item L4, memo from the Director of Education. The board meeting
Thank
of
you,
March
Mr. Chair.
23rd.
You'll see on the memo that
Mr. Domingo.
board staff are recommending that we cancel the March 23rd board meeting. Traditionally, we have 2 meetings per month, but within our board, we also have a tradition of only 1 meeting during March. The calendar follows the same as it did last year, where the meetings would be on either side of the March break. But in order to allow all of our staff to have a proper break and fulfill that goal of everyone being well, we would prefer that even our CEC staff, where possible, take a break during the March break. It's very difficult for them to do if they need to be preparing for the board meeting. And it certainly is always at the discretion of the board. If anything urgent came up, that you could call a special meeting. So it is our recommendation that you cancel the March 23rd board meeting.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions for the director? Trustee Armstrong.
Neither meeting falls during the March break this year. Have we considered using March 23rd to hold a special town hall board meeting so trustees can address questions from the constituents in our community.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we have not considered that.
Trustee Coburn?
I'll move the motion.
Trustee Curley?
Oh, I'll second that.
Any other questions or comments?
Will we be recording this vote?
Once we finish with the questions. Trustee Armstrong has requested a recorded vote. Director D'Amico, can you call the roll call, please?
Yes, I will start. I will be using the roll call with the screen in front of me. So I'll be starting with the chair. I'll be starting with Sandra Moore.
Agree.
John Curry.
Yes.
Shelley Lawrence.
Yes.
Brian Coburn.
Yes.
Cindy Simpson.
Yes.
Joanne McEwen.
Yes.
Spencer Warren.
Yes.
Jeremy Whittet.
Yes.
Glenn Armstrong.
No.
And Mark Mullen.
Yes. The vote is 9-1. So the motion passes. Item M, new business, we have none. We have no notice of motions. Confirmations of the action report of January 12, 2021. Can I have a mover, please? Trustee Coburn and Trustee Simpson. That the action report covering the period of January 12, 2021 be received. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Inquiries or administrative announcements? I just have one that the OCSTA recommendations, if you have any, we have received 5 so far. So if you can get them into Hillary, please, and she will be sending them out tomorrow for all trustees to look at. Sorry, I don't have the dates in front of me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director. It closes tomorrow, and then they're sent out on Thursday. And I need them back by late Thursday so that I can send them into OCSTA on Friday. That's correct. Just an update. Do you have any administrative announcements, Director?
No, we don't, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Trustee Lawrence and Trustee McEwen. That the regular board meeting of January 26, 2021 be adjourned at 8:27 p.m. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Have a good evening.
Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.